School too. It's Mr. John. And we are going to be reading books the next couple weeks with this character on the cover of the book. And that his name is Curious George. And our book is called Curious George's 5-Minute Stories. There are a few in here, and we're going to read a few of them. And when I open up the cover here, it'll tell us who the author and illustrator are. The author and illustrator are a husband and wife team by the name of Margaret and H.A. Ray. And our story today is called Curious George Blasts Off. Blasts off. I wonder what that means. Well, I'll tell you what. The story starts off with George getting a letter in the mail, and I'm going to read it for you. It says, "A small spaceship has been built by our experimental station. It is too small for a man, but could carry a little monkey. Would you be willing to go in it?" A spaceship. Blast off. That's right, George is going to be going in a spaceship. And he is very curious, so let's see where he's going to be going in a spaceship. Are you ready? Curious George Blast Off. All of Curious George's stories start out the same, and it goes like this. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. One day, George got an important letter. George's friend, the man with the yellow hat, helped him read it. "George," he said, "Professor Wiseman needs your help for an experiment. He's built a rocket ship to travel into space. It is too small for a person to ride in, but it is just the right size for a clever monkey." George thought and thought. He had never been to space before, but he was very curious about it. "Do you want to go into space, George? You will have to be very brave." George was glad to help. George and his friends set out for the museum at once to talk to the professor and meet the other scientists. "We are so happy you are willing to help us, George," said Professor Wiseman. "Let's gather everything you need for your flight." They got the smallest size spacesuit for George, along with a space helmet, an oxygen tank, emergency rockets, and a parachute. They helped him put everything on and taught him how to use it all. When everything was ready, a truck drove up with a special screen mounted on it to watch the flight. Everyone got on and they were off to the launching site. They checked all the controls of the spaceship, especially the lever that opened the door. George tried it too. He was very excited to go to space, but he was excited to come home too. Finally, the great moment had come. George knew just what to do. He went aboard the spaceship and waved goodbye. Then, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! The ship rose faster and higher until the scientists could no longer see it in the sky. But on the screen, they saw George clearly all the time. Now the moment had come for George to bail out of the ship. Professor Wiseman flashed the signal. Everyone watched the screen. George did not move. He did not pull the lever. In a few seconds, it would be too late. The ship would be lost in outer space with George in it. Everyone watching on the ground waited and waited. They were nervous, especially George's friend, the man with the yellow hat. Then slowly, George began to move on screen. He reached for a lever and the door opened at last. Out of the blue, an open parachute came floating down to Earth. Hooray! George was on his way back home. The truck raced to the spot where he would land. What a welcome for George. Professor Wiseman hung up a big golden medal around his neck. "Because," he said, "you are the first astronaut to fly into space and come back to Earth." On the medal it said, "To George, the first space monkey." The newspaper man took George's picture, and everybody shouted and cheered. The man with the yellow hat most of all. "I'm proud of you, George," he said. "I guess the whole world is proud of you today." It was the happiest day in George's life. A monkey in space. That sounds strange. I wonder if a monkey has ever been in space before. I have a video on my website the email that I sent, so why don't you watch it and see if monkeys actually go to space.